You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Alex. Alex, how are we doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. It has been a week. We've got like OTAs beginning, or not OTAs, sorry. Mini camps are beginning. We've seen a couple monster deals get signed since we last spoke. One was Justin Jefferson that I don't think I wasn't surprised that it happened. I was maybe a little surprised at the number, but good for him. You know who doesn't like that deal is old Jerry Jones down there in Dallas, because he's going to have to pay CeeDee Lamb, and I don't know that he can. I don't know that he can pay Justin Jefferson money for CeeDee Lamb. So that was a mistake by Jerry Jones to not sign CeeDee Lamb before Justin Jefferson reset the market. And then today, as we sit and talk to you here on Tuesday night, Christian McCaffrey signs a big deal. Looking it over, it's averaging $19 million. It's an extension that adds 2 extra years to his already pretty awesome contract. And so that's pretty big. He resets the running back market, which I say, that's what the headline is there on ESPN, is he resets the running back market. It's like that. The running back market seems to kind of,
it's a market of one.
Yeah, it's there's nobody else doing Christian McCaffrey things. Like, he really is a one of one. So like, it's not exactly like, other teams are going to be like, well, we got to pay him Christian McCaffrey money. No, you don't. Unless there's another Christian McCaffrey coming up, you're not going to have to pay them Christian McCaffrey money, as we saw with, the free agency last year, and kind of how it's already played out this year with teams already shoring up what they're going to have in their backfield.
Right. And how many, we've now seen it 2 years in a row where it's, guys that, shouldn't necessarily, or, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to have to take a pay cut in order to stay with the team, or, to even kind of sign a deal there. So yeah, it's the running back market is a market of Christian McCaffrey. Like that's about it. Right. And everybody else is kind of playing in a different level when it comes to the contract. So, although, right, to kind of piggyback off of that, there was reports coming out that, the Falcons are preparing to utilize Bijan Robinson like Christian McCaffrey is utilized out in San Francisco. And quite frankly, I'll believe it when I see it.
Oh, yeah. I think everybody wants to utilize a running back like they utilize Christian McCaffrey out there in San Francisco. But, like, not everybody has a running back like Christian McCaffrey out there in San Francisco that you can utilize like that. So, I think, NFL is a copycat league, right? That all these teams want to have a dynamic playmaker at the running back position that can run and catch and, do all kinds of different things. But that there's a reason why there's one Christian McCaffrey, because he's a special player. And that's you don't find those just laying around. And if you did, then there'd be a lot of teams that should have a lot better records.
Yes, very much so. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how that one comes to fruition and kind of plays out there. I don't know that we're going to see that kind of usage there, but we'll see, I guess. Like that's kind of where that comes down to, is we'll see.
Yeah, and like I said, we've got some camps happening right now. There's some players holding out, some players being fined, and that's okay. They don't care. They make so much money. It doesn't matter what the fines are. But the calendar's flipped to June. We're getting closer and closer. Football season will be here before you know it.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of one of those that like we were discussing a while back, where there's this a massive. I think it was Jamal Murray when we were talking NBA there a little bit, but how they leverage this massive fine on it, and sounds really big, but when you compare it up against the contract, it's like a speeding ticket for everybody else, right? Like it equates to like a $200 fine for the rest of us. Yeah. So
yeah.
It's funny how just when you put it in that kind of perspective, how much that it shows that they got this massive fine levied up against them, or they didn't collect this much of their contract bonus type of money because they didn't attend this or attend that, or. But when it's all said and done, it's you know, pales in comparison to what the overall number is there, and it's a very small percentage when you start looking at it from that angle. So very interesting nonetheless.
It looks good optically by the league, right? When you can say, "Oh, we fined him this much money." Oh,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. The all that did was reduce the tax number. It seems like.
Uh-huh.
All right. Anyway, we'll move along there. Any other kind of news notes you want to hit up here before we start rocking and rolling? Because we got a busy show tonight.
We do have a busy show, so I think we should probably just get to it. I know we kind of skimmed over Justin Jefferson, but like, guy's good. It'll be interesting to see how good he is without Kirk Cousins. We kind of got a taste of that last year, right? But
right.
It'll be interesting. Like,
well, and that's part of the contract too, right? Like when you don't have a quarterback that's eating up that kind of salary cap, you can pay guys like that, right? Like,
but then you don't have a quarterback that's eating up that kind of salary cap,
right? Well, and
typically that means you don't have a quarterback that's worthy of eating up that salary cap,
right? Like, because when you look at it, right, I saw a deal out there the other day where it talked about the highest paid non-quarterback players in the NFL. Justin Jefferson now number one, right? A quarterback on Sam Darnold on his fifth or sixth team here in the league now, type of thing, and JJ McCarthy as your two front runners going into camp here.
Yeah.
So rookie deal and a guy on a kind of a veteran, on the more of the veteran minimum side of things, lower end quarterback contract there. And Nick Bosa was another one that had that as well, right? A guy with a rookie contract. And oh, by the way, the rookie contract is Mr. Irrelevant rookie contract money. So you get some flexibility when you start rocking and rolling through that.
And here's what I think these teams want to do, right? And this is why it's so attractive to take a quarterback in the first round or the second round, because the example I'm going to give you is a second round quarterback, but you hope that you can get a guy in there on the cheap that will allow you to spend money on those role players, on those other positions, and not worry about those, and then have a guy who, outperforms what he's worth on that rookie deal, right? So prime example is Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, right? Jalen Hurts on his rookie deal got that team to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And sure, he earned his money after that, but on his rookie deal, he got that team to the Super Bowl. And that's because they were able to spend money at other places to make sure that that defense was filthy, right? Mm-hmm. There were some playmakers on that offense, and you were able to do that because you weren't paying a quarterback $45 million a year to get you there. So like the NFL, as I said it at the top of the show, it's a copycat league, right? So you hope that that's what you can do, is get a guy who can punch above his weight class at quarterback before you have to pay him $45 million a year and take away that money from somebody else on the team, from other positions on the team to facilitate that, because you are nothing if you don't have a quarterback in this league. It is so quarterback centric. So if you can do that with a rookie quarterback on a team friendly deal like that, it's possible, right? So like Minnesota has seen that it's possible.
Right.
If it's JJ McCarthy or it's Sam Darnold on a veteran minimum, right? You don't have millions and millions and millions of dollars tied up in that quarterback spot. But that, again, like we said, that means you don't have millions and millions of dollars worth of quarterback playing for you. So
right.
that it's a double-edged sword. You hope that the guy can outperform on his rookie deal. And I Jalen Hurts came to mind. Brock Purdy is another one. Those are two recent examples, but like, can you think of another one beyond those two of like recently that has been good on their rookie deal that got their team to a Super Bowl, not win, but got their team to a Super Bowl? And of course, I say all that, and the team that's won the last couple has had a $50 million guy calling the snaps, but
it's only about a $40 million.
Oh, that's
him.
fair.
and one of those I believe he was still on his rookie deal. So
so there you go.
There certainly is that one, right? CJ Stroud coming in the league on that rookie deal, like
right. Like so Stroud's got this year and next year, right? And that's you hope by year 3 that team has figured it out. They've got all the pieces in place. They make a run. It's going to be hard because they got to go through Patrick Mahomes, but maybe the Chiefs won't be the Chiefs in year 2 and 3 of CJ Stroud.
Right. Joe Burrow took the Bengals to the Super Bowl on his rookie deal. I believe Jared Goff, when he was with the Rams, was still on his rookie deal.
I think you're correct on that. But that blueprint exists, right? Like that, but it doesn't happen often. And think of all of the first round quarterbacks that get taken, that it doesn't work. And that it doesn't work that way. And then again, think about like Arizona, right? Arizona didn't get to the promised land when they were still on Kyler's rookie deal after they drafted a quarterback the year before,
Right.
Baltimore, right? Baltimore was good, but they didn't get to a Super Bowl with Lamar, but you got to pay him because that's your best option, right? Like Lamar's the best option out there for Baltimore. And you would upset a fan base if you let that walk out of your building.
Exactly. Right.
Yes, there are examples out there. And recently, like it seems like these guys are a little bit better prepared coming out of college, especially the older guys coming out of college. But it's not easy to do.
Right. And Lamar won an MVP on the rookie deal there as well, right? Like you mentioned him, but that was kind of another one that stood out there too. So yeah, and there's a lot of guys here too that we can certainly see what that could look like here, right? Like Anthony Richardson going into his second year.
Yeah. Well, realistically though, his first year, like
right, because he missed so much time last year.
Yeah, he missed way too much time for me to even be like, well, that's his rookie year. Like he's still a rookie. He won't get to 17 starts until midway through this year, right?
Right.
Or 3/4 of the way through this year.
Right. And so it'll be interesting to see how some of these guys play out. We're gonna get rocking and rolling through a few of these different quarterbacks tonight, because that's where we're going to start breaking down and start doing some of those player breakdowns and analyses on the quarterbacks. And we're going to kind of start at about QB 17, or actually we'll start at 34 and kind of work our way up, right? So we're kind of going 17 through 34 tonight is what we've kind of got there on the docket. But no, you're right. It's absolutely interesting to see how these things play out here, and where the where the contracts kind of lie. Also, kind of one other player that stood out there as far as a contract and all of that was AJ Brown, was also in one of those top high paid non-quarterback positions in there. And he signed that deal when Jalen Hurts was still on his rookie deal there as well. So just kind of exclamation point on that.
Because they had the money that they weren't invested in a quarterback. And back to Philly, right? Like they were fortunate that Hurts was able to become a superstar quarterback and play like a superstar quarterback on a rookie contract. But then guess what? Hard decisions have to be made. AJ Brown's out of town now, right? Like you got to pay Jalen Hurts. That money's got to come from somewhere because it's a salary cap league and you don't want to pay that luxury tax.
So, well, it's a hard cap too. It's not
right. Oh, I guess that's even.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of that, but so yeah, and it's one of those that the same things are gonna, some of those decisions are gonna be made in Dallas here too, right? When it comes time to sign CD, and Dak's also, coming up for contract extension there as well, and
Micah Parsons needs to get paid,
right? So you've got three.
That's three, right. And they did it right. They did it with Zeke. Right. So they had Zeke and Dak and oh goodness, what was his name? That wide receiver. I don't think they ended up paying him. Why can't he's not in the league right Cooper now? Is it Amari Cooper that I'm thinking of?
Well, they ended up trading Amari in his contract.
Right.
So
yes, I think it was Amari Cooper that I was thinking of. But like they had a three-headed monster before, but man, if you got three to pay, that's round peg, square hole stuff right there. It doesn't really work.
Right. So it's getting tough to be super competitive when you're when you have three
When
guys.
55% of your payroll is three dudes, right?
Right, on a 53-man roster. Like
Yeah.
the other 50 guys are taking up less than half of the combined.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out, and it'll be good to see too, right, when we see some of these things come through. So awesome. Well, shall we go ahead and start with our quarterbacks here?
Let's do it.
All right. So first off, we're going to start with the guy, and these are coming off of kind of best ball ADP right now, since that's kind of what's going on and all of that. And yeah, as these things progress, we start getting more into redraft, we'll start kind of utilizing some of those. But we're kind of going off of the ADP right now for a lot of best ball formats and where these guys are coming off of. So we're going to go 34 deep overall when we look at the quarterback position. 32 of these jobs are starting jobs, and we'll look at a couple of guys a couple of extra guys here that may be in the contention for camp battles, things like that, as it kind of rock and rolls through. But first up on the list, we've got the Raiders with Aiden O'Connell. He's coming into his second year here in the league, and Aiden O'Connell had a ho-hum kind of performance last year when it was all said and done. 213 completions, 343 yards. 343 attempts, 62.1% completion for 2,218 yards. Managed to throw 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, was sacked 24 times, and had a total of 11 rushing yards. But he did get 1 rushing touchdown. Thoughts on Aiden O'Connell?
So we didn't get to see a lot of Aiden O'Connell last year, right? He didn't take over starting until October 1. That was his first game against the Chargers. Rocky start, loses his first 2, including one to Chicago, which seemed impossible to do. But then picked up, back-to-back wins against the New York teams, lost against teams that you probably figured he should, somehow did not score more than 3 against Minnesota in that setback of football. That 3-0 game there on December 10th. And then he finished the year with 5 wins as the starter to 3, 4, 5, 6 losses. So overall, not bad. It's just, I don't know that he had the confidence as a rookie. That team was kind of in turmoil, right, with the coaching and all of that stuff. And it was a kind of a mishmash year for the Raiders. They still ended up doing well enough, but is Aiden O'Connell is this 4th round pick, the guy you're going to hang your hat on. So looking at it this year, they lose their running back, right? Josh Jacobs is gone. So your running game is now Zamir White, Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah. So does he have a running game that can help him? Does he have the wide receivers that can help him? Yes, Devontae Adams is still there. Jacoby Myers, a very great second option. But beyond that, does he have the weapons that he needs to be successful? Devontae Adams is a special breed. You're going to have to feed him the ball. Defenses are going to try to prevent you from doing that. You get a Brock Bowers, which I think is great, but we've talked about it on this show at length before. It takes a while for tight ends to figure it out in the NFL, right? It's that 3rd, 4th year. So you have Michael Mayer already on the roster, which is helpful. There's some continuity there, some familiarity there, but I think it's going to be tough for Aiden O'Connell in redraft leagues. No. Single QB leagues, no. Superflex leagues, I'm going to look at other places, because the next guy that we're about to talk about, it may be the guy, right? I don't know that Aiden O'Connell, as we sit here and talk about it on June 4th, I don't know that Aiden O'Connell is going to be the starter come week 1.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot to that, and where Aiden O'Connell's coming off the board at, I can certainly, kind of see that. Like most of the time, he's going undrafted, right? Especially for if you're looking at a single QB league, even at best ball, right? Like that's getting way down there to the point where you're talking 200 plus kind of ADP on this one, the 34th QB off the board. So this is a guy that I think when it's all said and done, though, will not be the starter when it's in, when it comes to, when the dust settles here on training camp, right? Like it's being built out there that it's going to be a camp battle. We're going to see, Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, compete for the job. Yeah, at that point, we've seen Gardner Minshew come in and be electric and be able to win games and be able to kind of will a team to victory and has some kind of that has just kind of that infectious leadership almost when it on the football field that you see guys making plays. The team just seems to get a little spark when he's under center. So Aiden O'Connell, this is one of those that I was a guy that I don't think that any of us really thought would see meaningful playing time last year at all in his rookie year. So he definitely kind of surprised a little bit from that aspect. And when you take that into consideration that it was a rookie campaign, things like that. But this is one of those that, again, right, like Aiden O'Connell's a guy that I'm not looking to draft, not looking to put on my rosters. If I am, it would be in a best ball format, and it's going to be because I'm looking to go something kind of tricky and really go quarterback committee. And I've got 3 to 4 quarterbacks on a best ball roster, and really weighted for that in even a super flex best ball type of format. Like that's where it would come down to it. And that's where I would potentially look to do that. Other than that, Aiden O'Connell's a not drafting for me. Any other thoughts on Aiden O'Connell?
No, because my thoughts are going to be about the next guy.
All right, awesome. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the next guy then. And the next guy is Gardner Minshew, who on the Vegas Raiders now was with Indianapolis last year. And when he was with Indianapolis, 305 completions, 490 attempts for a 62.2% completion percentage, 3,305 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 34 sacks, 34 rush attempts for 100 yards with 3 rushing touchdowns. Thoughts on Gardner Minshew?
I love that Gardner Minshew is still in the league. While it's fun that he is finding a place for himself on a real roster, I don't think I'm going to have him find a place for himself on any of my rosters. Just because, again, we're looking at what they have there in Las Vegas and what he's going to be asked to do. And is he going to actually play the whole year, right? Like that's what I want, somebody who's consistent in playing. So with the camp battle between him and Aiden O'Connell, again, as we look at this on June 4th, I don't know who's starting there in Las Vegas, but you do have a run game that's going to, take some time to develop. What does intrigue me if Gardner Minshew does get the starting job is that he does have a Devontae Adams and a Jacoby Myers that he can throw the ball to. And Devontae Adams can hide a lot of mistakes, right? Devontae Adams can make you look good. I could probably complete, 8 of 10 passes to Devontae Adams not because of anything that I do, just because Devontae Adams is that good of a receiver that he would cover up my blemishes with his excellent play. So Gardner Minshew is look, he had a great year. He's proven that he can, play in the league. He can win in the league and can put up good stats in the league when he's a full-time starter. To your point, kind of the same player as Aiden O'Connell, which is why they're kind of going in the same area in this 34-33 range, is that how much of Gardner Minshew are we going to get? And when we get Gardner Minshew, is he going to be the one that takes care of the football, or is he going to be the gunslinger that has some fun and puts up some stats, but also you're going to pay for mistakes that he makes?
I can see that, right? And it's one of those that I would be willing to take a shot with Gardner Minshew, right? Like especially if I'm playing in a super flex last draft pick type of thing, like I would probably give that a shot, right? Like he's coming off the board in the 200 range, so he'll be on the waiver wires in most leagues when it's all said and done here after the draft period ends. And at QB 33, right, like that just kind of speaks to the fact that there's a lot of folks out there that are speculating as to, is it Aiden O'Connell? Is it Gardner Minshew? Teams come out and said that it's going to be a camp battle and these guys will be competing for the job. And, where that kind of, looks and works. But if I'm looking at this, would I rather have Gardner Minshew or Daniel Jones? It might be a Gardner Minshew. Would I rather have Gardner Minshew or Russell Wilson? Yeah, that's a tough one there as well. Bo Nix or Gardner Minshew, right? Like these are some other guys that are kind of going right above him, and there's a good chance I might lean for Gardner Minshew as my third QB on my Superflex roster over some of these other potential options there, just with some of the draft capital there and things like that. But I think Gardner Minshew could have some sneaky upside when it's all said and done, especially in a Superflex type of league here. So that's kind of where I see that one. And any other thoughts on Gardner Minshew?
Nah.
All righty. Let's go ahead and rock and roll through Bo Nix, who the Broncos decided to draft in the first round. And Bo Nix, the quarterback out of Oregon, coming off the board, 32nd QB, right around ADP 200. Thoughts on Bo Nix?
It's going to be a struggle this year. We're pretty confident that the 12th overall pick is going to be the starter, at least for a majority of the year. If not right away, he'll get in there. The run game is the run game. This is a chance for Sean Payton to really take over this offense. It is no longer trying to make Russell Wilson work in Sean Payton's offense. It is Sean Payton making his offense work. So this is make or break, the next couple of years for Sean Payton. As Bo Nix goes, so does Sean Payton. If it doesn't work out, Payton's going to be out of a job. But Nix has talent around him, right? And this might be my blue and orange glasses sticking on here, my ever dying love for this dumb franchise that we all follow. I say we all follow that on this show. But he's got Cortland Sutton. He's got Josh Reynolds. He's got Marvin Mims. He's got Adam Troutman and Greg Dulcich as security blankets there at the tight end position. So the fan in me, the Broncos fan in me, wants this to work. The fantasy football kind of looking at this from 1,000-foot view says not this year. It's not going to happen this year. Just realistically, he's a rookie. He's going to have to figure it out. The NFL is a little bit different than Pac-12 defense. Like NFL defenses, a little bit different than Pac-12 defenses. RIP to the Pac-12. But it's not going to be this year. If it is, if it's ever going to happen, it's certainly not going to be this year.
Yeah. And, I think that very well might be your blue and orange, your bleeding blue and orange speaking a lot there, because you're right. There are some weapons on the roster, but this is a roster in which, some of your top receiving options, Cortland Sutton, who had the rejuvenation at touchdowns last year, but other than that was a pretty forgettable campaign. Jerry Jeudy no longer in town, and they sent off a former first round pick for not much in return. Marvin Mims was electric and flashed at times last year, but again, like was not, the team didn't capitalize on that or we didn't really see him on the field as much as you would expect for somebody that flashed as much as they did early on in the season. So I don't know that I'm necessarily gung-ho about Bo Nix here. And I think that it wouldn't surprise me to see this Denver offense be heavily run here to try and do that in a lot of quick screen game type of things to bring that home. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me if we see Denver go 4 running backs deep this year. And we basically see a tandem of thunder and lightning type of running backs and just kind of alternating back and forth through there. So Bo Nix is there. He might be worth a stash with the last pick of that in a super flex type of deal. Take him as your third QB. Like I could potentially see that, but I am going to be steering clear of him in just about every format this season.
He's got value in Dynasty, but just like every rookie quarterback has value in Dynasty, right? Like,
right.
And of the rookie quarterbacks, he's got, in my opinion, the lowest value in Dynasty. Like of the first round picks.
I'd probably throw JJ McCarthy right there as well.
Yeah.
I can certainly dig what you're putting down there. Alrighty. Well, let's any other thoughts here on the Knicks?
No.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on
it's
over.
It's going to suck to be a Broncos fan again this year.
Yep. We suck again.
Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
All right. All righty. Let's go ahead and rock and roll over here, and we're going to talk about Russell Wilson, who right now is coming off the board at QB 31, 194th overall in a lot of cases. And Russell Wilson had a serviceable campaign last year, right? 297 completions, 447 attempts, 66.4 completion percentage, 3,070 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 80 rushing attempts for 340 yards and 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Russell Wilson?
So he did all that in an offense that wasn't geared towards him, with a coach that was actively trying to run him out of town, right? He did all that. And still, like you said, Derek, it was serviceable. What I like is the 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. And he was, had a better completion percentage than he's had for his career. The average was down by kind of significantly, by about a yard, right? A yard per completion average was down over his career. But, the touchdowns to interceptions was still good. He's running basically a 3-to-1 clip on his career, and he was 4-to-1, right? With touchdowns to interceptions last year. So he did fine. To me, if he goes to this offense in Pittsburgh, where there is, again, still talent around him, Najee Harris is we need to see him take that next step, right? And be what we all thought he was going to be, and not last year Najee. We just don't need last year Najee, right? George Pickens, great wide receiver. Van Jefferson is serviceable, right? Roman Wilson, they've got other guys. Quez Watkins is on this roster. So they're Pat Freiermuth as a tight end, and we know that Russell Wilson can feed a tight end, a good pass catching tight end. So this is a sneaky play to me. If you can wait on Russell Wilson and you don't have to spend the capital, I have no doubt that if Russell Wilson plays the entire year, because Justin Fields is also on this roster, right? So like he's going to have some motivation to keep going. But if Russell Wilson plays the entire year, he starts all 17 games for Pittsburgh. I'm not surprised if he finishes like in QB1 territory, right? Maybe not the top 12, but in that 12, 13, 14, to me, this feels like a classic Kirk Cousins season that's about to happen, right? Kirk Cousins, you always are like, he just doesn't do anything flashy. But then at the end of the year, you're like, damn, how was Kirk Cousins QB9? Like, what happened? And it's not that he did anything spectacular. He just did what he needed to do. And over time, that consistency helped pay off. So to me, I'm kind of in on Russell Wilson this year, where I don't have to spend a ton of draft capital to get him. And I think when it's all said and done, he finishes well above where your return on investment is way, way higher.
There's certainly the potential for that. I think it also is going to very much depend upon how the Steelers are doing, especially as they get later into the season, right? Like they have that ridiculously difficult tail end of the season finish on that one. So yeah, it's one of those that if they're in playoff contention, if they're, going through that, I think that Russell may give them the best opportunity to try and win games there. But at the same time, right? Like you mentioned, they brought in Justin Fields as well. They'd already had Russ on contract. on a deal, and they went out and actively brought in Justin Fields as well, right? So one of those that wouldn't surprise me if we see down the stretch that the Steelers start rocking and rolling with Justin Fields to complete this season and finish this thing out. But you know, the Steelers are in kind of that, I want to say kind of rebuild mode, but that's not necessarily accurate there as well. They'll be a team that probably finishes right around the 500 mark. Maybe makes the playoffs, maybe doesn't. But this is one of those that I'm not necessarily all in on the Russell Wilson. I might take him as QB3 in a super flex, but even then, right? Like I want a guy that has the potential to be his starter, the team starter throughout the year. For my QB3 and Superflex, not a guy that I'm getting a half season kind of rental on and going through that. And I've got to start wondering when that hook is going to be, or when that change is going to happen.
And I'm guessing that's why his ADP is what it is because you just don't know how much you're going to get in the season.
Right. Well, and we're talking about Russell's fourth offense in 4 years here as well.
Right.
Right. Like drastic changes throughout it. And the last 2 seasons, 2 seasons ago was very forgettable. Last season it was serviceable, but it wasn't worth necessarily writing home about. And yet again, we now have Arthur Smith offense with Russell Wilson. So we'll see what that looks like, right? Like Arthur Smith with Ryan Tannehill did some really good things. Arthur Smith with the Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke experiment that we saw the last 2 years in Atlanta was not very good. So
not so much.
That I think also has something to do with the fact that, which Arthur Smith offense are we going to see? Are we going to see a lot of play action pass? And, we see Russell Wilson really be able to let the ball go down the field and be that great deep ball thrower and try and let George Pickens eat on the outside. Like maybe we might see that, or do we see the Russ that we've seen the last couple of years where there's a lot of holding on the ball and a lot of sacks that end up coming with that. And that's also kind of one of those that it kind of scares me off there a little bit. So Russ is a guy that, if I'm desperate for a third quarterback in a super flex, I might go that route, but that would be kind of where it'd be, is desperation mode on QB3. Any other thoughts on Russ? All righty, let's go ahead and move on over to Drake May. Drake May, the rookie going into New England and third overall pick last season. Thoughts on Drake May?
Well, again, this exercise is great because we're talking about guys that probably will start. But, I mean, as we sit here on June 4th, Drake May is listed second on the depth chart behind Jacoby Brissett. And is that what New England's going to do? Are they going to let Drake May sit? Do you have the ability to let a third overall pick sit for an entire season or 3/4 of a season or half a season while you let, Jacoby Brissett, who not a bad quarterback, right? Like Jacoby Brissett can win in this league, with the right situation. So, what does it come down to? How much is Drake May going to play? When does he finally take over? Because I do think that Jacoby Brissett will start week 1. Like, I don't know that it's Drake May that trots out there week 1. So how long until Drake May takes over? That's the big question. And like we've kind of said, how much of this guy are you going to get? And that determines his value. If you think he's going to go and see the field early, then that determines his value for you. That's your value point. But if you think that he's not going to, then what's the point of, you grab and stash? I think he's kind of in this same ilk of Russell Wilson and Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, some of these other guys, Bo Nix, in that it's hopefully a late flyer. in a best ball format, he's hopefully your fourth quarterback that you hope in week 16 goes ham and helps win you a playoff game. Like that's what it boils down to.
Right. Well, and that very well could be, right? Like a lot of times when you have that rookie quarterback that comes in and you see the you see that kind of come in, and a lot of times it's after the bye week in that rookie season that's when that change happens, right? Like now that being the case, I don't know that we're going to see that one, just from the standpoint that the bye week is late this season for the Patriots, right? It's a week 14 type of bye week here, and so I don't know that they'll necessarily wait that long. And I think that this is going to be more of a case of when the Patriots are kind of on the outside looking in, playoff type of picture, because I don't think that we're going to see them bounce back from being a third overall pick into a contender again this season. I think they've got some rebuilding to do on top of that. So I think those are the two scenarios, right? Like I think you're right. We probably see Jacoby Brissett come out, play week 1. You'll be the starter and maybe start seeing that transition happen somewhere around week 4, 5, 6, kind of in that range. And then we see them do what they do and see what they've got in the young rookie there. But there's also some of that you want to allow the game to come to the young man instead of kind of throwing him out there to the wolves. And when you've got a bridge quarterback and a guy that is a serviceable guy that can get you through a handful of games there, and Jacoby Brissett, I think that's probably what they do there as well. So at that point, I like the potential upside that we can see out of Drake May, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily looking to really go all in on the rookie here. One of those that I want to kind of let that one sit back and wait and see what happens with that through the first couple of weeks. Any other thoughts on Drake May?
Nah.
All righty, let's go ahead and talk about Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones had an injury-shortened season last year, had 108 completions, 160 attempts, a 67.5% completion percentage for all of 909 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 40 rush attempts for 106 rushing yards with 1 additional rushing touchdown and 30 sacks. Thoughts on Daniel Jones?
No. No. I don't want to be, so dismissive, but like I've seen enough. I don't need Daniel Jones on my roster. I like it hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked. No matter how much New York football fans or the Giants organization wants it to work, it hasn't worked. And so I'm done with Daniel Jones. I never really had shares of Daniel Jones to begin with, just because I don't think that he's been that great. What's great is his ability to run, right? Like that's been a really nice compliment to what has been kind of unremarkable passing stats. Is like you get those bonus points with the running, but no. I will, if it is Daniel Jones or the field, I'm the field every time. I'm not drafting Daniel Jones this year.
Fair enough. See, I could see Daniel Jones having some sneaky upside here, right? Like he certainly has a higher ceiling than most quarterbacks that you'd be drafting in this kind of range. And it has all to do with the kind of cheat points that happen from those mobile quarterbacks and from the quarterbacks that can get the rushing yards. We're not that far removed from Daniel Jones having, 600-700 rushing yards in a season and a handful of rushing touchdowns in there as well. Like this is one of those that he does have that kind of upside and that kind of potential. The arm and the throwing ability or the throwing stats kind of worry me. Very much worry me. Big alarm bells going off on that one. But simply from the standpoint that's right, like we haven't seen Daniel Jones necessarily emerge as a passer of the football in this league and really kind of develop that skill set and really kind of emerge from that standpoint, right? And 2 touchdowns to 6 interception ratio, like that speaks volumes. That Giants team was pretty awful last year, right? They went out, they drafted a wide receiver with the number 6 overall pick with Malik Neighbors, and that could potentially help them out there and help out Daniel Jones. But I don't know that if it's enough to do that, and if we're not going to see the Giants with another top 5 type of draft pick here this coming season, and looking at a quarterback in this next class, like that would not surprise me at all. And it wouldn't be surprising to me to see Drew Lock replace Daniel Jones partway through the season, and we see the second lap of Drew Lock as a potential starter here.
Third lap, right? Because Seattle.
Yeah. I guess he never really got in there and replaced Geno, because the camp battle there that Geno won and then didn't let go of that one. So, I mean, potentially, right? But like this is a Giants team that I don't see having a very good season here. So, and I think that speaks volumes as to what we'll see out of Daniel Jones as well.
It's just a shame because there are some decent players on this team that give you hope, especially this receiving core, but they just don't have the quarterback, I think, to help them.
Right. Like, it'll be interesting, right? Like there is something to be said about a guy that's, at 190th overall, 29th quarterback off the board, that you could potentially see some value there. But at the same time, yeah, I'm out on Daniel Jones. All right, Justin Fields. Let's go ahead and rock and roll around Justin Fields, who currently is the 28th QB off of the board. And with that, it's interesting to see him actually coming off the board higher than Russell Wilson in a lot of cases. And Justin Fields had a fairly serviceable season last year as well with Chicago. 227 passing attempts, 370 completions. 227 completions, 370 attempts, 61.4% completion percentage for 2,562 yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 657 rushing yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. Thoughts on Justin Fields?
Again, how much Justin Fields do you think you're going to see? It scares me a little bit. As bullish as I am on Russell Wilson, I'm not as bullish if it's Fields the way. Like if it's Fields this whole way, I don't think I feel as good about his ball distribution and being able to support or be supported by this cast that's around him. So and maybe that's unfair because we haven't really seen him with a great supporting cast around him there in Chicago. And it just seemed like it never clicked for him there. And maybe a change of scenery, a different voice. Well, there's been some different voices. Maybe it just helps, take the pressure off of him because he doesn't have to be the guy. He's not the face of a franchise anymore. And some of that stuff, that gets in your head and it affects your performance. Like these guys are humans as much as we want them to be, robots and just names on paper. They are humans and that happens. So, but all that being said, and the grace that I will give him in that, I don't know that I give him playing. So I don't think we're going to see a ton of Justin Fields throughout the course of the season. Or if we do, it won't be enough that it'll matter. So in a best ball format, sure. The guy's electric. When he's on, he's on. And there are few quarterbacks in the league that can score points like him. I just don't think that he's going to get the opportunity to be on. And that's hard.
Yes. And so, very much nail on the head there, right? Like there's a whole lot to be said about the fact that we may not necessarily see much of Justin Fields on the field. But again, like a lot of potential upside here, right? Because he gets those cheat points from the rushing work, things of that nature. And so if we see him get some significant playing time, we could see him drastically outperform his current ADP. But again, this is one of those that this is one that I'd rather let it kind of play out and put in a waiver claim, put in a fab bid if required, at that point. Just not looking to necessarily try and call that shot this early that Justin Fields is going to be that guy that stands up and takes fantasy world by storm this year. Because I think you're right. I think we'll see a two-headed monster and the quarterback room in Pittsburgh, which, right, where that old saying goes, if you've got two quarterbacks, you've really got none. When it comes to that, and it would not surprise me if we see that kind of play out where they have two quarterbacks and neither one of them are really fantasy serviceable this year. So, alrighty, let's go ahead and move on over to Bryce Young, currently QB 27, coming off the board with Carolina right after a very disappointing season in Carolina last year. Thoughts on Bryce Young?
So, yeah, it was. I mean, there's no way to describe it other than it was disappointing. 11 touchdowns. He played every game, 10 interceptions. It was a rough rookie year for him. And I don't know if it gets any better this year. Maybe, you've got Andy Dalton in there now to kind of, help him along and understand how to be a professional quarterback. The receiving core does make me think that there's hope there, right? There's Deontay Johnson who can be really good when he wants to be. Adam Thielen has been reliable. You bring the rookie in with Xavier Legette. Terrace Marshall is still on that roster. So like there's some pieces there for Bryce Young to be successful, right? You need the running game to be a little bit more productive than it was last year. That could be tough. You're asking a lot of Chuba Hubbard. You bring Miles Sanders in. You've got Rashad Penny for 3 weeks usually. And then it's just like that's going to be a true running back by committee. So like running back wise, I'm staying away from Carolina because Lord knows what's going to happen there. But quarterback wise, it should be Bryce Young's show. And there are the pieces there. Now, does he make it click in year 2? Like, does he learn from what he did wrong in year 1? And I think this is the first time that the kids really had to face adversity, right? Like in Alabama, there wasn't really adversity. So this is the first time that he's had to struggle. How does he bounce back from that? We don't really know because we haven't really seen that at a high level, right? So I like Bryce Young. I think he's going on the cheap. I like him to have a better year than last year. I think he certainly can only have a better year. I mean, it would be tough to have a worse year than what he had last year. So he's a good stash play as like your third or fourth quarterback on a best ball that could go off some weeks, right? It would be nice to see him go off, but I wouldn't like. He's not in my first two quarterbacks that I'm looking to take. He's not quarterback 1 or quarterback 2, but QB3 in a super flex or QB4 in that best ball. Like that's how I view Bryce Young.
Yeah. And this is one of those that I do think that Bryce Young probably has the greatest opportunity to be the guy that outperforms his ADP at the position by the widest margin this year, right? Like coming off the board at QB 27 would not surprise me if we saw him kind of get to a middle of the pack QB finish, right? Like wouldn't surprise me to see him, jump up around there, QB 15. Like that certainly I think would be in the realm of possibilities there. They did some coaching changes. They brought in some different coaches that have had a track record of developing young quarterbacks there. And so I think that there is some potential there. They did go out and they did bring in Deontay Johnson. They did bring in Xavier Legette. Adam Thielen is that, great slant, 5 yards guy that can certainly rock and roll that. So I think that they've got some good things going when it comes to the receiving core. I think he's got some weapons around him. A guy that I wouldn't necessarily mind as my QB3 on a super flex, or a potential quarterback by committee type of strategy there when looking at that. So I think he's got the best potential to outperform this ADP of kind of anybody that we've talked about so far tonight. And I think that it really wouldn't surprise me to see him return some tremendous value on ADP when this thing's all said and done at the end of this year. All righty. Any other thoughts on Bryce Young?
No, sir.
All righty. Well, let's go ahead and talk about J.J. McCarthy, who the Vikings went and drafted in the first round this year. And J.J. McCarthy coming into a rookie deal here. Thoughts on J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota?
I'm going to sound like a broken record here. How much J.J. McCarthy are we going to see, right? Sam Darnold is on that roster. When do they give the keys to the Ferrari to JJ, right? Because you got a Ferrari out there. You just bought a Ferrari out there, a couple of them with Justin Jefferson. So when does that JJ get to see the other JJ throwing footballs to him? I don't know how soon that happens. But with everything else that the Vikings have on offense, they made Kirk Cousins look really good. And Kirk Cousins is, like, let's be honest, Kirk Cousins is good. Like, yes, a lot of people give him a lot of flack for the amount of, fleecing of these teams that he's done in terms of his contracts. But, like, the guy is solid. Like, he's been solid. If J.J. McCarthy can be solid, like, that's all they need out of them there in Minnesota. Can he support Justin Jefferson? Can he, support a TJ Hawkinson, right? And his pass catching needs. I just am not sure that that's something that is possible. So I don't like the rookie here, but that's maybe just me being a hater.
No, I mean, I get it, right? Like, you got a rookie coming in. This is an offense that we saw without Kirk Cousins had some major opportunities last year, right? Like, they had times where they clicked, they had times where they didn't click, they had just a whole lot of issues kind of surrounding that once Kirk Cousins went down. It also didn't help that Justin Jefferson also missed some significant time last year as well. And then the fact that, but there's some really good talent around this as well, right? Like, they've brought in, TJ Hawkinson, anticipated to be back before the end of this season here as well. So good tight end there. They brought in Aaron Jones, who certainly can play. Did a lot of really good things in Green Bay. Jordan Addison had a really good rookie campaign. Justin Jefferson is amazing there as well. So this is one of those that I think we could see some good things out of J.J. McCarthy. You're not going to surprise me if we see Sam Darnold necessarily take week 1 or week 2 snaps here, just to kind of bring J.J. McCarthy along a little bit more and kind of allow a little bit of a bridge QB experience there. But this is a guy that I think Minnesota certainly is going to give the reins to very early on and see what they've got here and kind of rock and roll from there. Any other thoughts on McCarthy?
No, he should be good, right? And we're gonna find out if the Vikings just spent a ton of money on a receiver that they can't get the football to. Like, I have a hard time believing that. Justin Jefferson is one of those guys that can hide a lot of flaws and a lot of blemishes, and if you miss a target, like, you can probably still count on getting a catch. So maybe that'll benefit J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, very well might. Let's go ahead and talk about Derek Carr. Derek Carr coming off the board right now is QB 25, and Derek Carr, a ho-hum season last year. 375 completions, 548 attempts for a 68.4% completion percentage, 3,878 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Not much in the way of rushing work there, all of 40 yards. Thoughts on Derek Carr?
So what is this team going to look like, right? Is what do we have left of Alvin Kamara? How much is that going to be able to help ease the burden on Derek Carr? Is Derek Carr going to try to use Kamara the way that Drew Brees used Kamara, right, in the passing game a lot? Can can he get free points that way, right? He's not going to get free points from running, but they're free points when you dish the ball off to Alvin Kamara and he turns a 2-yard completion into a 14 or 15-yard game, right? So that's where you get your cheap points with Derek Carr is how much can he use Alvin Kamara. I like a lot of the pieces that Derek Carr has. I like Chris Olave. I'm never going to see him again in the home league because I think you pretty much have, taken that, Derek, there to make sure that I'm not going to see Chris Olave again. I traded him away to you. Rashid Shaheed, I think, is a sneaky play. Cedric Wilson Jr. is another sneaky play. So I think that those are there's really, really good value pieces there. Can Derek Carr support them? And I don't know. I seriously don't know. I'm really torn on Derek Carr because I like the pieces that are around him. I just don't know if he has the ability to support all those pieces. So I'm really torn on him. I want to see it work down there because I want some of those pieces to work out because I think that there's going to be some really good value in those other players. But I'm not entirely sure that Derek Carr can do that. So all that to say is third quarterback in a super flex, I guess. That's how I'm looking at him right now.
Fair enough. Derek Carr, I wouldn't mind even second QB in a super flex, right? Depending upon how my strategy is and where I'm kind of going with that one. Because we've seen Derek Carr be able to perform at the top end QB1 or QB2 type of range, back end QB1 type of range. And it certainly has the talent around him to do that, certainly has the ability to perform that way. A guy that I would very much like to see them utilize some of the pieces around him a little bit more so, such as Chris Olave and really allowing him to potentially elevate into one of the premier wide receivers in the league. So, there's certainly a lot of pieces here. I do think that there's a lot of potential here. And Derek Carr, I think, is some pretty good value when it comes to, draft day value and capital. And a guy that I would probably take over, even some of the guys that we're getting ready to talk about coming up here as well. So, I think there is certainly a lot of potential there for how that one could look and work. And would be a guy that I wouldn't mind putting on my team as a QB2. So awesome. Alrighty, let's go ahead and take a look at Will Levis, who is coming off the board, QB 24. And with Will Levis, had an interesting time last year, but we saw him go through and ultimately perform okay, right? 255 attempts, 149 completions, 1808 in yards, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and just a few rushing yards there as well. Thoughts on Will Levis?
So he did all that in 8+ games. I'm not going to say 9 games because his last game there on December 31st was 2 completions on 6 attempts for 16 yards. So 8+ games where he was kind of the guy. Only had more than 20 completions twice, and both of those were – oh, nope, just kidding. One of those was in a win over Miami. Crazy that they beat Miami. But he is a player that I think is being elevated. His ADP is being elevated by the players that are around him. I don't think he is elevating his ADP, but the guys that are around Will Levis make him very attractive as a quarterback. Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd. You've got Big Okonkwo there. Chiggy as the tight end. The running game they maybe have figured out with Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. So he is a guy that I think his ADP right now is being elevated by what's around him, and can he support what's around him? I think it's going to be interesting to see how a DeAndre Hopkins and a Calvin Ridley on the same roster work, right? Those are two alpha dudes that expect to be the guy and have been the guy on previous teams. And now they need to be in a more complementary role at times. So how can Will Levis facilitate that? How can you get a Tyler Boyd who also can be a guy, like he can support that role. He hasn't really had to there in Cincinnati when he was there, but so there's this receiving core that has plenty of talent and has plenty of catches. Is there enough? Is Will Levis going to be able to figure it out and support that? And will that sour, at some point, right? Will me above team take over in that locker room? It's going to be tough because it's not Mike Vrabel there in Tennessee anymore. So he pretty much was able to make sure that team stayed on the rails while he was there. So it'd be interesting. I think Will Levis, he's got certainly the playmakers that make him an attractive option. I'm okay taking him. I think I'm the best that I'm okay taking him right now is as a QB3 in a super flex. I don't know that I would want him as a QB2 right now. And maybe that's silly of me just because of what he does have around him. But I think I need to see something before I say like, oh yeah, that's the second guy that I want to plug in my roster week in, week out.
Fair enough. And guy that I wouldn't mind necessarily having as my QB2, right? In a super flex, certainly as a QB2 as a depth play in a single QB league. But they did go out and revamp this team quite a bit, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Bringing in Tony Pollard, bringing in Calvin Ridley, bringing in Tyler Boyd. Not only that, they also this team had a lot of issues last year and even the year before that with the offensive line, and they've gone out and added pieces on that as well, right? They drafted J.C. Latham in the first round to be their left tackle. They brought in Lloyd Cushenberry, who's a very good center during the offseason through free agency there as well. So like they definitely did bulk up and address some of the offensive line issues there as well. And the fact that you have the thing that kind of stuck out to me was the fact that Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook, Ekine, and Kyle Phillips, those were your starting three wide receivers 2 seasons ago. Like that was really the wide receiver core makeup of this roster kind of going into 2 seasons ago. And the fact that those guys are all kind of, the second string guys behind Ridley and Hopkins and Tyler Boyd. And I'm really interested to see how they're going to utilize DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, because I think these two can play off of each other incredibly well, right? Like Calvin Ridley's best season as a pro came when he was playing opposite of Julio Jones, who, right, like similar kind of build as far as what you would see out of a Nuke Hopkins there. So I think that it's going to be really fun to see how they utilize these two guys together and which one they decide to line up as the X and the Z, depending upon these formats here. And then Tyler Boyd out of the slot, probably one of the most underrated slot wide receivers in the league, especially from as fantasy, like he gets overlooked a lot there. But before you saw T. Higgins and Jamar Chase come into Cincinnati, Tyler Boyd was a pretty good receiver that they utilized regularly there, and certainly put up some good fantasy production back in the day there. So Will Levis is a guy that I'm interested in, but a guy that if I'm push comes to shove, I'd probably take Derek Carr over Will Levis at this point. So alrighty, let's go ahead and rock and roll into Geno Smith, who was the 23rd. Come off the board as the 23rd quarterback there. Geno certainly kind of returned to earth after that spectacular season the year before. 323 completions on 499 attempts, a 64.7 completion percentage, and 3,624 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 155 yards on the ground, and 1 rushing touchdown. Thoughts on Geno Smith?
Sign me up. All right. So here's why. Because Geno Smith has all of his guys returning, right? We've got this offense looks the same as it was last year. And while what you just said doesn't excite you about, what Gino was last year, what does excite me is that there's a new voice in the room now. And it's the new OC there is Ryan Grubb, who spent the last 2 seasons as University of Washington's offensive coordinator. And University of Washington's offense was awesome. It was fun. It was very fun to watch. It took them all the way to the national championship, right? Kalen DeBoer goes out of town. His coaches scatter. That guy, the offensive coordinator, doesn't have to go very far, right? He stays in Seattle and just moves from the University of Washington over to whatever the hell they're calling Quest Field now. Lumen Field. There you go. And that offense, that excites me. Now, NFL offense or NFL defenses are much better than the Pac-12, as we've said. But that offense excites me. And what excites me is that offense isn't a bunch of new pieces. It's just all of the players working together that know each other already. So that's a leg up. You're not starting from scratch. You already have a rapport with all of these guys. You're just learning a new language, right? You're just learning a new language with all of them. But if you're all doing it together, it's fine. So I think that Gino will return fantastic value on where he's drafted. I think that Kenneth Walker will get used better. I think that Zach Charbonnet gets used a little bit more. DK Metcalf is involved. Laviska Shenault, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba, like Noah Fant. Like this offense has playmakers on it. And they have an exciting coach that will, I think, allow playmakers to be playmakers. So that to me is success. It screams success should happen. So I like a Gino as a real good value QB2, right? He's going off the board here at 23. There's no way that Geno Smith plays all 17 games and finishes QB 23. There's absolutely no way.
Fair enough. And I can certainly see where you're taking that and where you're going with that, and you can kind of pick it up there a little bit. But at the same time, like this is a quarterback that is going into his age 33 season, right? Like this is a guy that has been around the block more than once, so to speak, several different teams, several different kind of opportunities through that. And we saw a really, really good season in 22. And last season was pretty much a return to what we had seen out of Geno in the past when it comes to kind of fantasy finishes there, right? Like still better than some of these other seasons out there. But when he was starting significant games there and playing in significant games, like those seasons there, we saw a lot of QB 20, QB 26 type of finishes. Last season he finished at QB 19. So you're right. Like he probably will outperform the QB 23 standpoint there, but I don't know that I can kind of sign up and see that finish higher than QB 18, 19, 20. So I think that there is some value there, and I can certainly get behind that one. I just don't know that there's that tremendous value there. And one of those that, looking at it, I certainly wouldn't have a problem putting Geno on the roster, especially as a QB2 in a super flex, or a QB2 in a single quarterback league there. But I don't know that I would move him up above kind of any of the guys even directly in front of him, as far as if I'm looking at the draft board and I'm staring down Baker or Watson or Aaron Rodgers. Like I'm going other directions there for sure.
I feel good if Geno's still on the board, that and those quarterbacks start going. I still feel okay.
Okay, that's a fair point there. All right, let's go ahead and look at number 22, Baker Mayfield. And Baker was playing on a prove-it deal last season and certainly proved it to the point where Tampa Bay decided to retain his services again. Last season had 364 completions on 566 attempts for 4,044 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Had a little bit of groundwork with 163 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. Thoughts on Baker?
So what does Baker look like on a proved it deal? I don't know that we know, right? Like he was playing with some desperation because I think this was the last shot, right? I think realistically, and I think if you ask Baker in his heart of hearts, this was the last chance for Baker to stay in the league. And he needed to put together the performance that he had to stay in the league. I think that this was his last hurrah. And he did. And to his credit, he did. And he put together a great season. Can he back it up? It's going to be tough. New offensive coordinator with the Buccaneers. He's kind of bounced around from the Rams organization to the University of Kentucky there in the SEC. Kentucky wasn't bad last year, right? And they were decent. But now he's down there in Tampa. Liam Cohen is his name. So another new offense for Baker to learn. Feels like he's doing one of those every year. That he's just learning a new offense. What is good, the same as I said with Geno, is that the guys around him are remarkably the same. So Rachaad White's still there as your running back. Mike Evans is still going to be Mike Evans, who's been the picture of consistency. You're going to have Chris Godwin still, Trey Palmer, Kate Otten. So like those are pieces that he's familiar with. I'm okay taking Baker as a QB2. Like I have no problem with it. I don't expect him to flirt with QB. I might flirt with QB1, high-end QB2 when it's all said and done. But I have no problem with Baker as a QB2.
Yeah, I could certainly see that, right? And so it's interesting, right? Baker finished as the QB10 overall last season for that. But when you looked at the weekly finishes, they weren't the knock it out the park QB finishes that you would really want from a fantasy perspective there, right? Like there was a lot of kind of middling performances there, but they were consistent. He didn't necessarily go out and lose you a week in a lot of cases, but he didn't go out there and win you a week either. And a lot of that, right? Like Baker was a guy that you picked up off the waiver wire in most cases and was able to kind of just ride that to fairly consistent points out of the QB position. So he's a guy that, from a fantasy perspective, I don't know that I'm looking to go out there and try and see lightning flash again, right? And try and see a repeat of a top 10 fantasy finish on the season long there. And even if that is the case, like I'm going to be going other directions in the quarterback position as well, to really have to try and play matchups, to try and play a quarterback by committee type of approach here. Because again, right, like we saw good performances out of that, but at the end of the day, right, like it wasn't necessarily go out there and win the week type of performance. A whole lot of, QB 10 through 20 type of finishes, which for fantasy purposes will get the job done, but not the way that you're hoping to kind of see points come through there, especially if you're going later QBs type of deal there. And so there's some value to be had there, but I think there's some better options with that draft capital there as well. So, all righty, let's go ahead and head over to Deshaun Watson, who's coming off the board as QB 21 currently. And Deshaun Watson in a very injury-shortened season last year. And we'll see what this looks like. But thoughts on Deshaun Watson?
Well, he's coming off a shoulder surgery, so that kind of scares me a little bit. Although recent reports say he's progressing, and I haven't seen anything that says he's not going to be ready for week 1. So you have to think if he's healthy and ready to go, he's going to be the guy. However, you don't bring in Jameis Winston for nothing, right? Like there's got to be a reason why you brought in Jameis Winston to help back up Deshaun Watson. or perhaps even play if he's not ready to go. So, man, this has been so tough because like he was so good in Houston, and then he hasn't been the same. Sat out the year, had the off the field troubles and issues, and then had to sit the 2/3 of the season in Cleveland, and then he came back. Didn't look the best because it looked like he hadn't played for a year and a half, and he hadn't. And then last year was really disappointing with the injury. So, like, I know that Deshaun Watson owners have. I think that explains why Deshaun Watson is QB 21 right now. In his ADP, because I think a lot of people are gun shy with him. I don't know what to make of him. I really don't. Like, is he a guy that if I'm drafting and it's Deshaun Watson and I'm looking for a second QB, I think right now I'm waiting and I'm gonna pass and punt that decision to somebody else to make. So like if it were to come to, like, I'm just telling you, if I'm drafting right now and I need a second QB and Deshaun Watson is there and he's the best quarterback available, I'm punting that decision and I'm not going to make it. So I guess that means that I don't want Deshaun Watson on my roster.
Yeah. And it's one of those that it's tough, right? Because you're right. There is a whole lot of that high upside that folks remember when they think of the name, right? Where when he came into the league, he was a top 5 quarterback each of the first 3 seasons in the league there, right? And then, since he's returned, he has yet to complete over 60% of his passes. Like that is a well below the average mark when it comes to quarterback play in the NFL these days, right? Like 60% used to be really good. Now it's, if you're not at the 65, 66%, like that tends to be an issue, especially with the your kind of the contract and what they've got going there as well, right? So I think there's a lot of questions there, right? Like certainly when he's returned, seeing some of the videos come through and seeing some of the practices, looks like they're looks like he's progressing there, but it's one of those that again, there's a whole lot of, you're drafting the risk as well as the potential upside on this one, and that's where the murky kind of ADP comes to play here as well, right? Like you're drafting a guy that can go out there and be a top 5 QB finish on the season, and you're also drafting a guy that has missed more time than he's played in games the last 2 seasons, right? So there's a whole lot of that you're doing, or you're drafting with that one, and at that point, right, like it really does come down to what's available, what else is on the board around him for players, and where I would look to go. Like I wouldn't necessarily mind going that route, but that's kind of where I'm at. So I think I might be in on Watson here, but yeah, if I'm going that route, I'm going that route with the hopes of the upshot there, and I will have done enough with the rest of my roster construction to not gamble the season on that one solely. So yeah, that's a tough one to kind of see there. So I probably am in, but not enthusiastic. All righty. You know what? Let's go ahead and we'll hit up number 20, and we'll save the next ones for next week here, and we'll rock and roll that. So let's go ahead and we'll hit up here number 20, Aaron Rodgers, who, quite frankly, had a very shortened season last year and is coming off the board as QB 20 overall. Thoughts on Aaron Rodgers?
What was it? 5 snaps, 4 snaps, and an Achilles snap.
Something like that. Yeah.
I I think honestly, a lot of this is the same as how I view Deshaun Watson. Like if I'm up and Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback available, I'm gonna pass. I don't know. Maybe that's to my detriment, but I don't need any part of Aaron Rodgers. There was a time where I thought that Aaron Rodgers going on what I dubbed the FU tour when he was in Green Bay, I thought would be really fun, and I thought he would put up MVP type numbers again. Like, I mean, the guy is a fantastic athlete and a hell of a quarterback, right? I don't know that he's got it anymore, and especially after missing all year, he is, getting up there. That's a tough injury to come back from at any age. But to do it at that age is not easy, and to come back and be a high level athlete. So I'm out on Aaron Rodgers this year. I think in any format, in any game, and again that could be to my detriment, but that's just where I'm at. I'm out.
Fair enough. I don't mind that one. Like that's a risk that I'm willing to take, right? Because again, right, like I'm not going to necessarily be going out there and putting that as my QB1, in a lot of cases, right? But he'll be my quarterback 2, which, at that point, if he comes out and looks not great, I'll go to the waiver wire and make some moves there, right? Where I might get a little bit more leery is in a super flex type of league where, if he is my QB2 in that one, maybe getting a little concerned there and potentially drafting another quarterback kind of right around that to shore that up and help bring that along, right? Like if I'm taking Aaron Rodgers there, I'm probably turning around and trying to get Derek Carr right around there just to kind of try and shore up that position there a little bit. So, but there are some intriguing plays around Derek Carr when it comes to an ADP perspective, like Kendre Miller's kind of in and around that spot there. Josh Downs is in that kind of spot there. A.D. Mitchell, Jahan Dotson, Pat Freiermuth, like those are some other guys kind of going in that similar range that I might have to go out and take a shot on those guys there. But Aaron Rodgers is a guy that I wouldn't mind adding as my QB2 in a single QB league. And if I'm going that route for a super flex, I'm going to try and shore that up with some other positions. Just from the standpoint that we've seen Aaron Rodgers go out there and dominate, right? He's I believe 4 MVPs throughout his career here, and several of those MVPs coming in recent seasons here as well. Like I wouldn't mind taking the upshot because that is there's some smart moves that you can make. This could potentially be one of those that there is some sneaky upside here that you could try and do to potentially go out there and steal some wins across the board there. Any other thoughts on Aaron Rodgers?
Nah. I hope he has a good season. Not for me.
Fair enough. Alrighty. Well, guys, I tell you what, I think we're gonna call it a night there. We'll go ahead and rock and roll some more QBs next week when we get to that, and we'll also have a guest the player for next week here as well. So we will rock and roll through all of that. But any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners, Alex?
No, it's we are in the it's a fun time, right? Because we got some actual, like, there's football practice, and that's kind of fun. But we're still we'll crank out these player profiles and kind of let you guys know where we're thinking on some of these players over the next several weeks, and we hope that you enjoy what we've got to say.
Absolutely. So if you want to reach out to the boys, you can certainly find us on all the socials at Good Old Boys FF on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I guess they call Twitter X these days. There we go. Showing my age there. Twitter /
It's still the Pac-12 to me.
Exactly, right. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF, as well as the best place to support this independent podcast. Head over to the youtube.com/@goodoldboysff. Click that subscribe button, ring that bell. Thumbs up, like the video, comment, all those good things there. Interact. We enjoy the banter and the back and forth there. And you're right. We'll start seeing some player profile videos up there and helping folks get ready to rock and roll here for the draft and be able to get those bite-sized clips there. But that's going to do it for us. Kevin should be back here next week, and we will be rocking and rolling through there. He is Alex. I am Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.